Welcome to another edition of Dungeons and Social Distancing with Nerdarchy.
Today, let's talk about Don't Be a Dummy, Use That Mummy, D&D Monsters. Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Steve, and as usual, I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchist Ted.
Hey, don't rely on dark gods to find your next D&D video. Instead, just hit that subscribe button.
And if you want Nerdarchy to keep showing up in your YouTube feed like a bad case of mummy rot, then hit that notification bell.
All right, our usual disclaimer. We are social distancing, and Ted's over there, and I'm over here, so we are filming virtually. This will end when this pandemic nonsense ends, and we'll get back to normal. So until then, please bear with us. But with that, let's get into our video. But if you want to help support Nerdarchy and get cool D&D products, do we have a way for you to do that? Down in the description, you will find a link to pre-order Out of the Box Encounters. It was a super successful Kickstarter run by yours truly, Nerdarchy. You can go down there, pre-order that book, grab the PDF, some cool other things you can check out in the description. With that, we're going to jump into our video. We're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons monsters. We're going to talk about the Mummy and the Mummy Lord, and we're going to kind of look at them from both the player standpoint as well as the Dungeon Master standpoint. So let's start right off with, how do you use the Mummy if you're the Dungeon Master?
Well, the Mummy is a very cool monster, and there's movies out there in spades about the good guys going up against mummies here and there, and you can go to the really old stuff that just has them looking more like nothing more than more advanced zombies, or you can totally go the route of the Brendan Fraser movies with the Mummy and totally have it with this super awesome intelligent foe that's got its own series of goals, and it winds up becoming more of a a plot villain than just, oh, this is a thing at the end of a dungeon.
Yeah, not just a Scooby-Doo style villain. So one of the things about the Mummy is they have super thematic headers, right? 5e in general is really good for this, where they basically have all these different headers for the monsters. Well, the mummies in particular are super thematic. So for the headers, we have Preserve the Wrath, The Will of the Dark Gods, The Punished, Creature of Ritual, Ending a Mummy's Curse, Undead Archives, Undead Nature, right? So all of these are super evocative in and of themselves, and each one has a little paragraph that tells you about it, kind of describe the mummies. So, and maybe even inspire some ideas on how you might want to use them in your game for story purposes. But the one that really stuck out to me was the Undead Archive. Now, that's this idea, this concept that mummies are actually intelligent creatures, and they can speak, even though they usually don't. So whoever created them, or maybe even their ancestors, can come back to them, and they become these unliving depositories of knowledge that you can kind of tap into. Basically, unliving undead libraries.
Now, another direction that you can wind up going, and I'm gonna, pull a card from the Wayback Machine. I never got a chance to play it, but the fine people, over at White Wolf that make, vampire and mage, they made a game called Mummy, and it was an attempt to take a different spin on, this concept of undead, because you've already got the vampires that are super evil. So, like, what if mummies were actually, created, and they were good guys designed to protect people and this and that. And I don't remember a whole lot beyond the good guy part, because like I said, I never got a chance to play it, but friends and I talked about it in college, some umpteen years ago, and it was really, really fun and interesting to have these conversations. But what if you were to take that kind of spin on it, that mummies, this creature that you're going to have as a villain is a good guy, but because of the undead nature, doesn't view things exactly the same way, that normal living folk do. So he's got whatever his mission is, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to get the mission done. And while, the mission is something that's going to benefit people as a whole or be something that's good, his methodologies are not. So once the players uncover this, information that is really trying to do something good, you wind up having this conundrum of, do you stop him or do you not? So you could have a lot of fun with a plot line on that regards.
Well, even in the D&D Mummy, a lot of what they're designed to do is to be guardians or protectors, oftentimes of tomes. But it does, it doesn't have to just be a tomb. It could be something else, but that's usually how you're going to encounter them in the game. And it could be like part of the mummy's curse is they're stuck in a place, and if they get awakened, then these more powerful mummy lords could then become main villains, and you know and it's by someone enacting the curse, it actually feeds into the mummy's kind of plans or desires to maybe get free of the curse so they can actually get back to doing what it is, whatever they want to do, whether it's for good or for ill. So the curse aspect actually helps them in a sense, where they could be like working towards whatever the curse is making them do, get back the piece of treasure, punish someone who's violated the tomb, and at the same time going, oh, how can I become a free-willed undead and be free of this curse so that I can act my ultimate scheme, whatever that may be. So, one of the things I think we should look at too is the mummies and mummy lords and kind of their, some of their stats and special abilities they get. Uh, they're a super interesting monster in the sense that they have some things that are super powerful when we're talking about our mummy lords, and then some things that kind of are going to like, oh, well, this is a little problematic. So you're going to have to think about these things when you use them as a monster. They have a decent armor class, uh, but their hit points are kind of low, 97 for a challenge 15 monster. And then we get into like they have a bunch of good saving throws. They have vulnerability to fire, but then they have damage immunities, necrotic, poisoning, then bludgeoning, piercing, slashing from non-magical attacks. They are immune to a bunch of conditions. They have spell resistance. One of the really cool things, or I should say magic resistance in this edition, so they have advantage against saving throws on spells. They have this cool ability called rejuvenation. If you don't destroy the heart of the mummy after you defeat it, then it's just going to come back in 24 hours and you're going to have to deal with it again. They're a spellcaster. It looks like there actually might be a typo on the entry because it has it as a 10th level caster, but they have 6th level spells, which would be an 11th level caster. But so they're getting cantrips all the way up to 6th level spell, which when you have access to things like harm, that's a potent foe, right? And we're not even getting into their abilities yet. They have two main abilities that you're going to have to contend with and you get to use as a DM. One of them being Rotting Fist, which they punch for a lot of damage. They're going to punch for 3d6 bludgeoning damage plus 6d6 necrotic damage, and there's the chance of them inflicting mummy rot on you, which is a DC 16 con save. Fail, you're going to take 3d6 more necrotic damage. And it reduces your maximum hit points by that amount, and you can't regain your hit points until you have a remove curse spell on you. So at this level, it's not really a big deal, but during a fight, it could be kind of a pain in the ass.
And that's not a single thing. Like, you can just kind of keep doing that, and once you couple that with their dreadful glare, targets one creature within 60 feet, and they got to make a wisdom saving throw, or become frightened. And if you fail by 5 or more, you become paralyzed instead. It's only going to last until the end of the creature's next turn, but that means it's got 2 rounds of beating on you if you happen to be paralyzed and unable to move.
Yes, and if you're paralyzed, every hit against you is a crit. You automatically double the damage. So and if then you get hit by a crit as well, then that's going to be bad news for you for sure. that's a lot of damage that you can possibly be taking. So these guys are going to be hitting really hard, especially against those foes that might have a low um, bonus to their wisdom saving throw. But not only that. So if against fighters and barbarians who might have a low bonus to wisdom, this could be a devastating ability.
So now Dave did mention earlier that they have a low number of hit points by raw, and they've got no bonus to the dexterity saving throw. They've got vulnerability to fire and fireball. Yeah, they're going to roll with advantage, but they've got just the dice in order to pass that save. So it is highly possible that you can engineer a situation that one or two fire spells and these guys are down for the count. If you're going to use a mummy lord, you really have to look at how hidden that jar is with their heart in it, because if you use this, they fight the mummy, kill it quick, destroy the jar or destroy the heart. You've really made short work of what could be a really fun reoccurring villain. So my thought pattern is what if you were to take the jar and do something special with that? So like create a magic item. Like the jar is going to offer some kind of bonus, and they'll carry it around not realizing that, oh, they're going to protect it because it's a magic item that's helping them out, bonus to hit points, or bonus to physical saving throws, something that would make sense for the fighter to kind of carry. But then they might have to figure out, why the hell is this damn thing following us around over and over again? It could be an amusing story to go through, and them having to do the research to find out why every time I'm trying to get a rest, this damn thing shows up and beats on us.
That's a great idea, disguising their jar so that they're carrying the heart. Maybe they don't even realize it. And again, the mummy is going to keep following them. And like Ted said, that low hit points combined with a vulnerability to fire means you're going to have to be really careful about how you use them. I mean, fortunately, they do get some cool legendary actions, so that even if they don't get to go on their turn, maybe they get to go after someone else's turn. So they'll get in some stuff. And I must say, like, as far as legendary actions go, the Mummy Lord has some of the better ones in the game, at least thematically. And they're also decent, right? So they can just take an attack, right, with their mummy riding fist, or use dreadful glare, which is okay. There's nothing exciting about that. Or blinding dust. They can basically magically make all the dust around them swirl up, maybe even coming off of them. Maybe their wrappings flailing around. Like, that's super thematic and cool. Blasphemous word is one of those things that might actually help with their survivability, because everyone within 10 feet of them has to make a saving throw or they're stunned. Now this one costs 2 actions, so so it's a little costly to do it, but it might be worth it if you can pull it off, especially around those pesky spellcasters that may not have a super high saving throw.
You've got Whirlwind of Sand, another one that costs 2 actions. It transforms into, which is like it says, a Whirlwind of Sand, moves up to 60 feet and reverts back to its normal form. But while in the whirlwind, it is immune to all damage, can't be grappled, petrified, prone, restrained, stunned. So it's a way, if it's in a bad spot, it can definitely just, oh, I'm gonna move. Oh, you think you put a stationary fire next to me and it's gonna affect me? Nah. At the start of my turn, I'm taking damage, but you know what? I won't be there because I'm just gonna move away with sand.
Whisk away. They can channel negative energy, so everybody in 60 feet just cannot regain hit points until the end of the next turn. So that's another way for them to kind of mitigate and control the battlefield. Now, when you couple those abilities, its abilities, and you start giving it some minions to put out there, the Mummy Lord can be pretty devastating. But like we said, you just have to be really strategic. It also gets a bunch of really cool lair actions. And these really speak to using it with other monsters, especially undead. So the first one is each undead creature in the lair can pinpoint living creatures within 120 feet of them. So even if they're like hidden or invisible, all of a sudden the party becomes beacons for anything, any of its minions, and it as well. So if you're like, oh, I'm going to be sneaky and you aren't going to see me, one of its lair actions would be like, no, I'm shutting that down.
So you're only going to be able to choose, a lair action each round. But you definitely have a lot of uses. One option is each undead in the lair has advantage on saving throws against things that turn undead until the next round. So if you've got a high level cleric who's all about trying to turn, that's definitely a way to go. You've also got any non-undead creature that tries to cast a spell of 4th level or lower in the Mummy Lord's lair is racked with pain. The creature can choose another action, but if it tries to cast the spell, it must make a DC 16 con saving throw. On a failed save, it takes 1d6 necrotic damage per level of the spell, and the spell has no effect and is wasted.
That one's harsh. I feel like that one is going to be the one that gets used the most, where the other ones might be situational, but it's just a super cool ability. And as the Mummy Lord, we also get some cool regional effects.
Yeah, food instantly molds and water instantly evaporates when brought into the lair. Other non-magical drinks are spoiled, wine turning to vinegar, for instance.
That could be some cool foreshadowing into the fact that something's going on and you're definitely in a bad place. You've already invaded the tomb, you've gone through a couple rooms, and you decide to take a short rest and pass around the wineskin, and the water is stagnant, or pull out some rations and they've rotted, and usually it's something that doesn't rot.
So those kinds of things are great to do. Using foreshadowing, especially if they don't know, what these effects mean. They could begin speculating, and while there's definitely things worse than a mummy lord, mummy lords are pretty potent, and doing these things is going to be fun. And if you've got somebody who is in the party that really likes to eat or really likes to drink, then they might, begin making poor choices. It would be a role playing choice, nothing mechanical, but it would definitely be like, all right, my guy's on edge because I didn't get my after battle snack.
Yeah, no second breakfast.
But you also have divination spells cast within the lair by creatures other than the Mummy Lord have a 25% chance to provide misleading results. So, like, you could definitely, like, if you've got a party who really likes doing that kind of stuff, if you roll behind the screen and be like, okay, you happen to roll within that spectrum, you give them information that they think is accurate, but completely isn't. That can be a lot of fun to play with as well.
So, and finally, I think this is one of our favorites. A creature that takes treasure from the lair is cursed until the treasure is returned. The cursed target has disadvantage on all saving throws. The curse lasts until removed by a remove curse spell or other magic. So the fun thing about this is if this dungeon is particularly difficult and the players have gone through part of it and they decide to leave and take a long rest someplace else where they feel safer, and they've taken some of the treasure with them, well, now they're all cursed until they come back to the lair with it and replace it. But the truth of the matter is, how would they even know they're cursed until they had to make saving throws? So it may not even be until the return trip that they discover that they have a curse on them. And if they don't have those spells prepared and they're not ready for the mummy's curse, then they're just going to have to kind of deal with it.
Now, for a challenge 15, you're definitely going to be using this against a party that's level 10 or higher. So they're going to have access, most likely to remove curse. It's on a lot of different spell lists. So the thing to really look at is number one, you definitely want to, toy with them. Don't let them know that they have been cursed. Or if you're willing to play a little bit more hardcore rules, fifth edition has streamlined a lot of things to make it easier. But for the most part, I like to do curses that a simple remove curse doesn't just fix the problem. You have to, do this strange ritual, or you have to, defeat the thing like the Mummy Lord who, you know, uh, who has placed the curse, purify the area, and then remove the treasure. So, like, I think those kind of things would be, a lot more fun and thematic given, a powerful foe such as this. You want to have these kind of things make it suck for a while to make it really earn that treasure.
But even if you don't decide to alter the rules like that, even nobody has remove curse on their automatic spells known. Like they have to actually prepare that. So they got to know their curse. They have to prepare it. I find it's the spell that I don't think I've ever seen anybody just prepare just because. So chances are, you'll probably get at least a day of difficulty out of them, until they realize they're cursed, and then they're like, oh, I'll prepare this. But again, too, you're also going to suck up some of their prepared slots where maybe they would have preferred something else instead. So also like with the vulnerability to fire thing, in the movies and media, a lot of times mummies are portrayed as having this fear of fire. So that's kind of thematic. That kind of works. If you are someone who is able to use fire and does so often, you are going to get the Mummy Lord's attention. You're going to be a primary target for the Mummy Lord. If they have a way of scrying on you in their lair before you even get to them, they may already be gunning for you because they perceive you as the biggest threat out of everybody. So that's something to keep in mind as the GM as well. Um, Placement on the battlefield is going to be really important when it comes to using the Mummy Lord. You might have lesser mummies, just regular mummy minions, which are very, very similar to the Mummy Lord in the base stats and the abilities they do. It's just to a lesser degree, or other undead. So you're probably going to want to cluster your undead in bunches away from your Mummy Lord. So the players have to make the hard choice if they're going to cast a fireball. Do they include the Mummy Lord and miss most of the monsters, or do they take out these groups of monsters? So you can kind of do some things like that. Maybe you can give the mummy some cover, gives him a bonus to his saving throw to make it a little bit easier. You might give him magic items. Like he might have a potion of fire resistance that he drinks before the battle, or an ointment that he puts on, or perhaps even a ring that grants resistance to fire. So that kind of negates some of it. Or if there's more powerful or potent magic items that maybe even give him immunity, these things would be pure gold for the Mummy Lord.
Because as we said, the Mummy Lord only has 97 hit points. But if you actually look at the DMG, a monster of this level really typically has 281 to 295 hit points. That's basically like a third of what it actually has. So you definitely want to play up, wherever you can to shore up that weak point. Now, if you like modifying monsters and you can make all the changes you want for your game, just make sure it's a proper credible threat for the party that you're putting it against, and not just like, what, I'm gonna give them a womp just because I can.
The big thing really is to make sure that heart is really hard to get to and implies its own challenges. I think the design here is that this is a foe that you fight over and over again, and he or she keeps coming at you because you have to destroy the heart in order to defeat them. Like Ted said, hiding or disguising it is something favorable. We were discussing before we shot the video the idea of what if you took the jar and made it, kind of tough, and it's kind of magical. Like you can see through it; it's clear, but swirling around it is all this mist, and these faces keep kind of like pressing up against the jar, and clawed hands presses up against the jar. And you were to take a bunch of incorporeal monsters, and they're actually imprisoned in the jar with the heart. And yes, you can break it to get to the heart, but you have to free all these monsters to do it. And perhaps the magic of the jar protects the creatures in the heart. So the only way to get it either is to break it, and then they become vulnerable. But also, maybe you just freed 100 ellipse, or some other horrible monster.
So, and you could, oh well, you're gonna have to fight some of them, but what if some just wind up leaving, and whatever problems they cause are in fact the party's fault, and that could lead to other adventures, other stories, other problems. Yeah, you got the mummy lord, but now you've got all these things that are out there. So it's about really ramping up and getting into the evil and the undead of the whole nature. I think Dave's completely right that this is designed that you want to use this monster over and over again, and that time number two, time number three winds up being a little bit of a surprise. The mummy doesn't have to just be like, oh, I'm back, I am beelining for those guys who took me out. No, I mean, it's got its thing. He's not running for death, he's got things to do as well, so you can have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an intelligent monster with a super high wisdom. So they're not, they are dummy. They are not dummies. Well, I kind of think about Ghostbusters as a Ghostbusters 2, right? Where they have the containment unit for the ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what if in the temple actually it's easy to find the heart? It's in this big machine, arcane machine, that is some kind of nexus that draws in incorporeal undead and stores them, or some other kinds of horrors. Maybe it's a lock to a portal to another realm. It's powered by the heart. So to destroy the mummy and the heart, you have to depower the machine, which opens the portal, lets a million specter incorporeal undead creatures free. Any of these things. So it could be a bigger problem. And the players can clearly see, here's the heart. It's clearly connected to this machine that's lit up. What does it mean? If they're rational, they're just like, I destroy it, well, really bad things happen. If they take their time and maybe you put some things around here to so they can discover and explore, and they go, oh, what, it actually tells us what it does. And really the mummy's purpose is to keep this machine going, and it's powered by its heart. In some ways it's actually been enslaved. And then they have the moral dilemma. What do we do? Do we give the mummy eternal rest and also get rid of this credible threat? Do we keep this machine going? Could it be a quest to replace the heart with something else? And also, since they kind of invaded the mummy's lair, like, part of the curse for the mummy might be, oh, you can't let anyone live that knows about this. So now they have to go find a solution while being harried by this powerful foe that at some point may stop like confronting them directly and send minions after them. And then like after they've been softened up, then he pops in to say hello personally. So it can lead to a whole adventure. It could be a whole campaign. You could even start off with a regular mummy, only give it some of the attributes of this mummy lord, and then it gets more powerful as the campaign goes along, so it actually becomes the mummy lord. I feel like this could be a whole campaign. So I think we thoroughly talked about some ideas for the Dungeon Master. But players, what do players got to know? What should they know if they're going up against the mummy and they don't want to be a dummy?
All right, so you understand, so you already mentioned that they are a potent spellcaster. We already mentioned that they are vulnerable to fire, and that they have resistance to damage from, or actually immunity to the damage from, normal weapons, and that makes them difficult to fight. They're immune to charmed, exhaustion, frightened, paralyzation, poisoned, necrotic damage, poison damage. So like there's a lot of stuff that you have to go in against that you just aren't going to be able to use. They're very wise, they're very, charismatic, they're strong, and everything but dex, they've got good saves on and advantage against spells. So spells are really not going to be the way to bring this thing down. But if you're going to go fight it, that means you got to get, kind of toe to toe with it with a magic weapon, and that's going to create, problems as it tries to pound you flat while you're fighting it.
So the thing about the mummy lord is it's slow. So you want to stay away from it. It's not hard to stay away from it. You want to attack it with ranged weapons. Preferably, you want to attack it with fire spells that target decks of 5th level or higher. Super specific, right? Because it's going to be super vulnerable to that. So, things like Firestorm, Flame Strike, they're going to be really good. Empowering your fireball to a 5th level spell slot is going to work really well. I don't actually know how your 0th level cantrips are going to work against its ability, if you would have to make a saving throw or not. I imagine you would. I guess they're considered 0th level spells. So, you're going to have to make that con save, which isn't always that great for a caster. So Warcaster is going to come in super helpful for you. Oh, no, that's only concentration checks. Son of a bitch. Resilience is going to be super helpful for you in con, or being a sorcerer is going to be helpful as well.
So you have a lot against you, and you have to understand that as you stated, you're probably going to be fighting this thing more than once. So you really have to be careful, and kind of take notes. It does not have a lot of hit points. It's got immunities, but if you can hit it with fire damage, like if you got a flame tongue sword, that'd be super handy for you. But all of those things that are going to get those hit points gone quick, because if not, this thing is going to hit you, and it's going to hit you like a Mack truck. They are at challenge 15, so you could technically use this against a party that's level 10 if you think that they're well armed, and that they're up for the challenge. But this is something like that first encounter could be really hard, could be potentially lethal if the Mummy Lord winds up getting the jump on them. But you really, when you're going to use these things, you want to have that so it's a repeat encounter. If you design this so that the party marches in, slaughters it for 97 points of damage, and moves on, and it's never seen from again, that definitely defeats the theme and the feel of what this monster is supposed to do.
So really, player characters, if you encounter something that looks like a mummy, ask your DM if you can do research and figure out, these things to use when you're going against them. And then you can do some cool lore things in the world if your DM is down for it, where you research the specific mummy lord in order to figure out their weaknesses, and then you learn about the heart, and then maybe you learn some personal things about who this mummy was before they were a mummy, to kind of understand where that heart might be now, or to understand those that did this to the person and created the mummy. I think those are all going to be some fun, cool things that the GM can use to actually reveal campaign and world specific things to the player characters.
I completely agree. Bringing that level of lore and detail into this kind of encounter is something I think is a lot of fun for DMs. And if you're the kind of character or player that really enjoys pulling those kind of details out, I think that is a lot more fun and a lot more enjoyable for the game.
Absolutely.
So if you like this video and want to see more monster videos, then check out Aberrations, Nerdarchy's Guide to D&D Monsters.
Do you know we are creating content for 5e for players and dungeon masters alike over on Patreon?
But that's not all. We do live chats with our patrons. Our patrons are automatically entered in our monthly giveaway, and more.
So until next time, stay
Stay nerdy.
nerdy.